Hi everyone, this is Elias Martin of CollectingJapanesePrints.com. Welcome to Woodblock Wednesday, where on Wednesdays we get together and discuss Japanese prints, paintings, history, and culture. Today's Woodblock Wednesday features two different print artists working in different genres who were interested in sort of the same area. And both artists traveled to the United States and were enamored by the American landscape and were inspired to produce prints depicting what they saw. And so I thought it'd be interesting today to show the work of both of these artists, showcasing designs that are relatively close to each other in terms of locale. Plus, both of these prints also belong to the latest group of prints that I will be showing in my latest acquisitions website. The latest acquisitions exhibition will go up on my website in a couple of weeks, so there's something to look forward to. So this is sort of a sneak preview of the exhibition, and you'll get to see two really wonderful prints. So without further ado, let's go to the table and have a look. So I'm going to back up here as I normally do, and I want to show you both prints. There are actually two very large size prints. The first one we'll discuss may look familiar to some of you. This work is by Hiroshi Yoshida, and the print is of Mount Rainier. And this is a very early impression. We'll go into the particular impression in just a moment, but I want to talk quickly about Hiroshi Yoshida. Yoshida was really interested in traveling around the world and traveled within the United States quite a bit. He visited the United States before the earthquake, actually at the turn of the last century, and was, he traveled around, produced oil paintings and watercolors, and then returned to the United States to sell his prints. And in all of those various trips, he did a lot of sketching, a lot of painting, and one of the locales that he visited was Mount Rainier. And Yoshida was an avid mountaineer, and he tended to visit locations of wonderful mountains, and Mount Rainier was perfect locale for him. The print we have here is a very early impression. We have a red Jizuri seal, a large red Jizuri seal, which the red Jizuri seal of this version, the large one, is only seen on the earliest impressions of the earliest designs from his career. That seal typically suggests the print is a trial print, meaning that it should showcase a brighter coloration with a lot of different variations from the normal impression. And this print is this print is exactly what that is. It's a exceptional trial impression. At first blush, what you could see which makes it a trial is the coloration of the mountain. You'll see there's some pinks and lavenders, purple and blue on the mountain face that is not on the later printings. And in fact, there's extra color blocks throughout the design. Yoshida printed the sky along with the mountain in multiple blocks that are not present on the later impression. And then what you also have is on the trees themselves, there's a wonderful mix of light gray and dark gray within the tree line, whereas the later printings or the more standardized printings lack that nuance. They tend to be just one color or very closely darker, where here we have a larger difference between the shadow, which is more of a gray, and then the silhouette of the trees, which is a darker gray, almost black. And it adds a lot more depth to the design. The other thing I should point out that there's embossing. It's not that visible. I don't think I could capture it well on the phone. And in person, it's not that obvious, but it's there. Something that you see only in the earliest impressions. On the standard version, you just don't see that. And I don't think the embossing was something that he planned for, more than it's what was captured on the earliest printings, just as a consequence of them being so early. The other point I want to make is the coloration of the flowers in the foreground. They're much brighter. And on the later impressions, I'd say they're a little darker. Not, I mean, I suppose that they're of the same intensity, but these are brighter in terms of they're lighter. And there's also a difference between the lighter pinks and the darker pinks and the rose color. That's not as visible. It's not as obvious on the later printing. And so, I mean, I can go on and on about this, but this particular impression, I think, is astonishing. Quite frankly, I mean, it's so beautifully done, and it's an example of the artist at work trying to experiment. Well, he's clearly experimenting, but he's trying to figure out how to produce this print in the best way possible, but also make it commercially viable. This particular impression required a lot more labor than the standardized version that he ended up with. And so he clearly cut some blocks off from the production. He decided to make some of the colors a little bit more streamlined and less nuanced. And so this early impression, which is exceptional, I've only seen a couple that look like this in 20 some years of me doing this. And so the printing of this is just a tour de force. And in person, it's just exquisite. And I'm trying to hopefully be able to convey how beautifully done this print is. And in terms of Yoshida's body of work, this work being very early, it was done in 1925, but it is one of the earliest prints from his body of work. And so, at this stage in his artistic career, he hadn't yet figured it all out. And so he labored quite a bit to produce this impression. And as I said, he later decided to streamline the process, and the regular version, which is beautiful, absolutely beautiful as well, is missing a few of these blocks. So I just wanted to, because I have this print, and it's going to go up on my website in the next exhibition, in my next update, I want to highlight this impression because it's so fantastic, and it's also very rare. The other thing I want to point out, that it has the title in the margin, but it does not have a signature in pencil, which means, that this particular print wasn't intended to be sold to the Western market. It was actually, probably Yoshida's own, working trial copy. He probably had it in the studio as an example what he can do. And then he ended up selling it after, not needing it, after his studio pretty much picked up the way that the print should look like. So this is one of those early printings, very rare, very important. And arguably, Mount Rainier is the most desirable North American design from his body of work. And one can argue it's probably his most desirable print outside of the pre-earthquake designs he produced. So, I just wanted to highlight that. And of course, I want to zoom in so you could see the beautiful colors and printing. I should say a couple words about the print in terms of the market. This is a very desirable and also expensive print. And the reason why is that it transcends Japanese print collectors, and there's a much larger market for this design. There's a lot of print collectors that love U.S. scenes of the U.S. in woodblock prints, and particularly of the West. And this particular print uh, transcends just the as I said the Japanese print market, and anyone that collects designs of North American scenic vistas would want this print in their collection, and so this is why it's so desirable. The other no, and the excuse me, the other neat thing about it is that it is quite large. It is almost double the size of an Oban print, Dioban, which basically is one of his larger. I mean, at the time when he was working, this was the largest print he produced. He didn't produce, he went on to produce much larger work, but in 1925, this was it. This is the size he was working on in this large format. And, I could see why. I mean, such a beautiful composition. You really needed room to showcase this. Now, moving along to the next print I have to show you. This is by the Sosaku Hanga print artist Junichiro Sekino. And this is a design from 1974. And it's basically a forest in Oregon. And so I think it's a interesting composition because it's striking. It's a snow scene. And there's a really wonderful sense of movement with the snow falling. The texture of this print is fantastic. There's the snow is both printed as well as hand applied with gofun that's been sprayed across the surface with a brush. And then there's some mica that's been applied to the composition. So you could see so it suggests sunlight trailing through in between the trees and the snow. It's a really stunning print, done in a very different style. As we just saw, the Mount Rainier by Yoshida is very realistic, but I would say that this is as well. It's very realistic too, but much more expressive. The pigments rest more on the surface, particularly because of the hand-applied gofun that's been splashed onto the surface in a very effective way. You really get a sense of falling snow. And so I should point out that Sekino was invited to the U.S. by a Ford Grant Foundation, and yeah, so I mean, he traveled to the United States on a grant to teach and demonstrate the art of woodblock printmaking. He taught at the University of Washington, and when he was there, I'm sure he walked around in the beautiful forests, and I'm sure he captured this scene from life. Just like Yoshida, who traveled to Mount Rainier, and I'm sure he hiked around the mountain and took various sketches, but I believe there's an oil painting of this design as well, which I'm sure he produced on site. And so it's really interesting to see both of these artists that are both Japanese, that are Japanese woodblock print artists, reacting to foreign destinations, both being in the U.S., and they both were here to promote the art of woodblock printmaking. And so clearly they were cognizant that they were interested in producing woodblock prints that depicted scenes of this particular visit. So I want to zoom in again so you could see how beautifully well done the print is. And of course, I want to show how much larger that print is next to the Dioban Mount Rainier. You could basically put two and a half of these Mount Rainiers onto the surface of this Sekino print. It's a very large print, and Sekino was known to have produced large size prints as early as the 50s. In fact, he has some very large scale early trial printings of nudes and landscapes, even dating back to the late 30s, early 40s. And so, I mean, he's always worked in this large scale. But Yoshida didn't. He was most known for his Oban-size prints, though he did produce very large-scale prints, but not in large quantities. And again, that was because of the commercial viability of the production of those prints. Yoshida, I should mention, worked with Watanabe very early on in his career, and they had a falling out, partly because Watanabe was so controlling, and like Goyo, who also worked with Watanabe and moved on from their association, Yoshida established his own studio. And in his studio, he hired his own artisans to carve his own blocks. He produced all of the designs himself, and he could print his prints, but he had a studio to do those things. And in order to make his prints commercially viable, he had to produce designs that he was happy with, but also that did not require as much work as they were sort of originally produced. So, for example, in this case, in this design, this is one of those early prints that he did in his career, where a lot more work went into making this print than the later version, as I mentioned. And so, you know, this is at the very beginning of his career when he was trying to figure it out. And so this is why I think this particular impression is just so important. Historically speaking, it's important, but just also because of its beauty and how well preserved the print is. I'm going to step back. I have a light coming off the window to the bookshelves, which casts a raking light onto the table, which allows you to see the colors, I think, in a more natural way. The Yoshida has such subtlety in its printing that there's a lot of dark, a lot of middle ground colors where there are a lot of shadows that you may not be capturing. I may not be capturing on the phone, so my apologies. But I'll have a very good image of this print on my website in the next couple of weeks when the exhibition goes up. So if you want to see better photos, I invite you to go to my website and have a look. So I'm going to zoom in on both prints one last time. I mean, it's just a stunning design by Sekino, and equally as stunning by Yoshida. And of course, both print artists were interested in capturing different aspects of the print, of what is possible in woodblock prints. Yoshida was really interested in capturing sort of the natural, also very realistic quality of the scene. Whereas Sekino was more interested in capturing the impressionistic quality, the dynamic aspect of the falling snow in this moment. And I think both artists were quite successful in achieving what they wanted. Now, before I go, I wanted to point out some books that I have available for sale, and they're important books to have in your library if you like both of these artists. For Sekino, this is one of the best books available in his body of work. It shows not everything, but it's a good attempt at a calligraphy. And this is a later edition of the Abe book on the complete works by Hiroshi Yoshida. I recommend this book as well. And this is a really cool exhibition catalog of portraits by Sekino that were shown at the University of Washington. So again, that association with a U.S. institution and a U.S. School where that paid host to Sekino, and of course that's why he produced this print. Well, I want to thank all of you for joining me on today's Woodblock Wednesday. I was running a little late today, so my apologies, but I'm happy that some of you were able to join me. And of course, if you didn't catch all of the video, I will be posting it onto YouTube shortly, so please, I invite you to please have a look. And of course, all of my Woodblock Wednesday videos have been archived onto YouTube. I have over 100 that deal with a variety of artists and subjects. So if you haven't seen them all, I encourage you to go check them out. And of course, my website is collectingjapaneseprints.com, where I have an array of fantastic woodblock prints and paintings, as well as a bookstore of out-of-print and important references for the artists that I carry. So I encourage all of you to pay me a visit on the website and check me out on YouTube with the other Woodblock Wednesday videos. So thank you again for joining me, and I look forward to seeing you on our next installment of Woodblock Wednesday. Until then, thank you.